Okay, let's unpack this.
I'm ready. We have a mountain of material on a figure who seems to be operating at the very intersection of technology, finance, and, well, societal overhaul.
If there is one person whose name is truly inseparable from the global AI boom, I mean, specifically that moment the world realized this technology was here, accessible, and moving incredibly fast, it's got to be Sam Altman.
Absolutely. He is, by pretty much every metric, the face of this revolution. Time even designated him as one of the architects of AI.
An architect is such an interesting word for him, isn't it?
It is, because he's not just an engineer or a scientist in the traditional sense. He is fundamentally an architect of systems.
What do you mean by that?
Well, whether those systems are software or corporate structures, venture funds, or now, artificial intelligence itself, his whole career has always been focused on building the levers that move the world.
Exactly. So our mission today is really to move past the simple headlines, beyond the ChatGPT success story and that crazy 5-day corporate drama, to really unpack the entire complex and often contradictory arc of his professional life.
Right.
We're looking at sources that cover his entire journey, from being a Stanford dropout all the way to CEO of OpenAI, and we're going to examine the key companies, that sprawling investment portfolio, the controversies, and, of course, the personal philosophies that seem to define him.
And I think to really grasp his influence, you have to look at all these roles at the same time. He's the quintessential Silicon Valley insider who ran the world's biggest accelerator.
And he's a prolific venture capitalist, controlling how capital gets allocated in these critical future industries like nuclear fusion and biotech.
Exactly. And then he's this disruptive futurist pushing these, well, radical global identity schemes like Worldcoin. We really need to understand the thematic links between the ambition that's driving his startups and the ambition driving his policy ideas.
Agreed. So let's start at the very beginning. Before he was the architect of AI, back when he was just an ambitious, technology-obsessed kid, let's dive into the making of a kingmaker. Sam Altman, born Samuel Harris Altman, came into the world in Chicago in 1985. He was the eldest of 4 kids.
But his formative period, it really began when his family relocated to Clayton, Missouri in 1989. And what stands out, even from very early on, is this relentless fascination with how things work.
And not just the software, which is what you might expect.
That's right. When he received his first computer, an Apple Macintosh, at just 8 years old, his passion wasn't just confined to programming. He immediately started learning to code, yes, but he also wanted to know how to physically take apart the computer hardware.
That early curiosity, that need to deconstruct and then reconstruct systems, it's something we see coming up again and again throughout his career, right?
It's a total through line. Whether he's taking apart a computer or later taking apart and rebuilding a whole corporate governance structure.
Yeah.
And we should note, he also had the advantage of attending the John Burroughs School, which is a very prestigious private school in St. Louis.
Despite that early advantage, he still followed that, what you might call the standard Silicon Valley path of the disruptive genius.
A dropout narrative.
Exactly. He enrolled at Stanford for 2 years, dropped out without even getting a bachelor's degree. And the reason he left was just classic entrepreneurial urgency.
He dropped out to found Loopt. He was only 19 years old.
19?
Yeah, and he was co-founding one of the very first location-based mobile social networking apps. This was incredibly a cutting-edge technology for the time.
We really need to emphasize the environment he was building this in. This was years before the iPhone came along and completely revolutionized mobile data and location services.
A whole different world. Loopt was trying to achieve this sophisticated real-time networking on these, well, clunky early smartphones that were operating on much slower 2G and 2.5G networks.
That was a huge technical challenge.
It was. But the idea, the vision, was strong enough to attract massive capital. The company managed to raise over $30 million in venture capital.
Which is a significant figure for an untested technology run by a 19-year-old dropout.
Oh, for sure. And the list of early investors is a real who's who. Sequoia Capital, and tellingly Y Combinator, the legendary accelerator he would eventually go on to lead.
Raising that kind of money from firms like Sequoia and initially getting $5 million from Patrick Chung of X Fund and NEA, it just tells you that Altman was recognized really early on as someone who could attract and deploy serious capital.
Even if the product itself faced, an uphill battle.
Right. Because despite all that backing and the ambition, Loop just struggled to get critical mass. It never really gained significant user traction.
And that's a crucial failure in his history, I think. It's a good reminder that not every brilliant idea hits escape velocity. The company was ultimately acquired by Green Dot Corporation in March of 2012.
The acquisition price was $43.4 million, which, okay, not a home run for the VCs, but it was a substantial payout for Altman personally. He netted about $5 million from the exit.
But what he did next is so much more significant than the exit itself.
Absolutely. The money did not sit in the bank.
Not at all. He immediately invested a massive portion of that $5 million share into his very first venture fund, Hydrazine Capital, which he co-founded just a month later in April 2012.
And this shows such a rapid shift in his mindset, doesn't it? From being an operator to being a capital allocator, or as we're calling him, the kingmaker.
Exactly. He realized that the greatest power wasn't just in founding companies, but in funding the entire ecosystem.
This transition was almost seamless. Even before the Loopt exit was totally finalized, he became a part-time partner at Y Combinator in 2011.
And he proved to be an incredibly effective networker and strategist there. So by February 2014, he's elevated to president of YC. This is the moment he really cements his position as a central power player in Silicon Valley.
He moves from just being a niche entrepreneur to being the steward of the entire startup pipeline.
And his time at YC was just defined by this relentless, almost dizzying expansion. He immediately set this audacious goal to fund 1,000 new companies every year.
Wow.
And this wasn't just about scaling the number of companies, it was about scaling YC's influence and its reach.
He also consciously engineered a shift in focus.
Right, he did. Before Altman, YC was primarily known for, software and web apps.
Yeah.
But under his leadership, he pushed very strongly into what he called hard technology startups.
So companies dealing with more complex scientific, physical, or deep infrastructural problems.
Exactly. Think fusion, biotech, advanced manufacturing. This really prepared him for his own later investment focus.
And he dramatically expanded YC's financial architecture, too. In 2015, he launched YC Research, committing $10 million in initial funding, and then YC Continuity,
which was a fund specifically designed to inject growth stage capital into the successful YC graduates.
That was a pivotal strategic move.
It really was. YC Continuity meant YC wasn't just planting seeds anymore, it was staying invested through Series A, Series B, and beyond. It basically transformed YC from a 3-month boot camp into a full lifecycle venture firm, capturing value at every single stage.
By September 2016, his role expanded again to president of the YC Group, which just confirmed the breadth of this empire he was building.
But here's where it gets really interesting, especially when we look at his operational style and particularly his departure. In March 2019, YC announces his transition to a less hands-on role as chairman of the board, which would allow him to focus on OpenAI.
But the sources reveal a crucial and highly irregular detail that only became public later on.
That's right. He left YC entirely by early 2020, but subsequent internal discussions and reports showed that he had, falsely claimed the board chair title.
He even listed it in SEC filings.
He did. And the Y Combinator partners had never formally approved that appointment.
So he was claiming a position of ultimate authority within the organization post-departure that he hadn't actually secured.
Yeah.
That's not a minor administrative detail. It paints a picture of someone who operates with a very distinct blend of ambition and, preemptive action.
He often prioritizes momentum and perceived influence over a strict adherence to governance.
Precisely. It establishes this pattern of prioritizing the goal, in this case, the next big thing, which was OpenAI over the accepted formalities of the current one. And this dynamic of pushing the boundaries of formal acceptance to get greater velocity and influence, it's a thematic thread that connects his YC departure directly to that explosive corporate crisis he faced later at OpenAI. That next big endeavor, OpenAI, started with such high-minded ideals, almost a monastic commitment to safety.
It did. OpenAI was founded in 2015 as a nonprofit organization. Altman was one of the key co-founders, alongside a really remarkable group, including Greg Brockman, Peter Thiel, and notably Elon Musk and Microsoft.
And the initial public declaration included pledges totaling $1 billion to fund the effort.
$1 billion. It's an extraordinary sum for a nonprofit research initiative, especially one focused on a technology that many people at the time considered to be decades away.
The initial motivation was almost entirely philosophical, right? It was all about AGI safety.
Completely. Altman openly cited these deep concerns about AI safety and the existential risk posed by artificial general intelligence. He and the others, they expected this to be a decades-long project dedicated to making sure AGI would benefit humanity.
But the reality of that $1 billion pledge, it soon ran headlong into the cold, hard economics of technological development.
It really did. By 2019, they'd only collected about $130 million of the promised funds.
Wow, that's a big gap.
A huge gap between the pledged ambition and the received capital. And reports also highlighted that YC Research, the fund Altman himself had helped launch, never actually contributed its promised share.
That financial shortfall must have created immense pressure. And at the same time, one of the biggest names on the board, Elon Musk, he resigns in 2018.
Right, citing a potential conflict of interest as he needed to focus on Tesla's own AI development for self-driving cars. This put the organization at a really crucial inflection point.
So the founders, and Altman in particular, they realized two things.
I think so. First, that the AI race was accelerating much, much faster than anyone anticipated. And second, that building AGI wasn't just a safety project, it was the most expensive technological project in history.
Requiring just staggering amounts of compute power and talent.
Exactly. So when Altman left Y Combinator fully in March 2019 to become CEO of OpenAI, he immediately executed this dramatic financial pivot. He openly stated his intention to spend $1 billion within 5 years.
Which is an unprecedented pace for a nonprofit.
And he immediately qualified that spending, arguing that achieving AGI might require more capital than any nonprofit has ever raised. This is that critical moment where the nonprofit mission just collides with financial reality.
And to raise the necessary tens of billions of dollars, OpenAI had to fundamentally restructure into that complex, capped profit subsidiary we know today.
With the nonprofit board sitting above the for-profit operations, at least in theory, to maintain the safety mission.
And that pivot, which was structurally necessary to attract massive investment, like all the Microsoft funding that came later, it's the direct cause of the philosophical conflict that followed.
Which brings us right to the Musk lawsuit.
Right. Musk, in his 2024 lawsuit, argued that Altman and the company basically broke their founding agreement by prioritizing profit and the commercial deployment of AGI over its original nonprofit mandate.
It's a classic ideological battle dressed up as a legal claim.
And OpenAI's defense was highly aggressive.
Oh, yeah. They countered that Musk only delivered $45 million, not the billion he had pledged. And they also noted that Musk himself had proposed merging OpenAI with Tesla.
Which would have completely subverted the nonprofit structure by placing AGI under a publicly traded for-profit umbrella.
This entire dispute perfectly encapsulates the tension that Altman is trying to navigate. How do you secure what is essentially existential-level capital without sacrificing your founding ideals?
And Altman's answer, clearly, is that the urgent race for compute and capability just overrides the nonprofit structure, because if they don't succeed, a less responsible actor might.
And you can't argue with their commercial success. The release of ChatGPT in December 2022 was a global event.
It generated widespread media coverage and achieved this unprecedented adoption rate. It received over 1 million signups in just the first 5 days.
It was a true shift in public awareness. OpenAI went from being a niche research lab to the central figure in global technology almost overnight.
And the financial acceleration was just as dramatic. Internal projections cited by Reuters showed $200 million in revenue for 2023, with a target of $1 billion in 2024.
This success put Altman on the global political stage. He testified before the U.S. Senate in May 2023 about the need for AI oversight.
And then he embarked on this aggressive global tour, meeting dozens of world leaders, the prime ministers of India and the UK, the president of the European Commission. He was recognized by Time as one of the 100 most influential people in the world.
And that kind of rapid power consolidation, paired with that opaque corporate structure, is what led directly to the explosive 5-day corporate drama in November 2023.
This is where it gets really interesting and where that theme of candor comes right back into play. On November 17, 2023, the nonprofit board, which, remember, still theoretically held governance power over the mission, removes Altman as CEO.
And their statement was extremely pointed. They cited a lack of confidence and stated that he was not consistently candid in his communications.
And co-founder Greg Brockman resigned immediately in protest.
That initial stated reason, the lack of candor, it's so resonant, given that earlier Y Combinator detail about the unapproved board chair title. It suggests the conflict wasn't about the product or the mission itself, but about governance, transparency, and Altman's operational style of just moving faster than governance can keep up.
The market reacted with panic, but a swift external resolution seemed to materialize almost immediately.
Right. 2 days later, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella announced that Altman would join Microsoft to lead a new advanced AI research team, effectively absorbing the deposed leadership and, maybe the core talent.
But that's when the true source of Altman's power became crystal clear: the talent.
What followed was a massive employee revolt. Over 700 employees, out of only 770 total, signed an open letter threatening to resign en masse and join Microsoft unless the existing board stepped down and reinstated Altman.
An astonishing 90% of the company was ready to walk. The sources indicate this was an act of just extreme loyalty to Altman as a leader.
And a recognition that the momentum and the forward trajectory of the project were tied entirely to him. And this revolt even included the chief scientist, Ilya Sutskever.
Who was on the board that voted to fire Altman.
Exactly. And he publicly expressed deep regret over his participation in that decision.
The board's position became immediately untenable. They couldn't survive that kind of overwhelming show of employee power and investor pressure.
No chance. Just 2 days after the Microsoft announcement, Altman was reinstated as CEO alongside Brockman. A heavily reconstructed board was installed with new chairman Brett Taylor and new members Lawrence Summers and Adam D'Angelo.
D'Angelo being the only original director to remain.
Right. The whole episode was just a textbook demonstration of CEO leverage. It proved that the board's fiduciary duty to the nonprofit mission was, at the end of the day, secondary to the value generated by the talent, which was loyal to Altman.
And the allegations didn't stop there. The former board members, they eventually spoke out, providing critical context to that lack of candor issue.
In May 2024, Helen Toner, a former board member, went into extensive detail explaining the rationale for the firing.
And what specific examples did she cite? What went beyond just, philosophical differences?
She alleged concrete failures of governance. Most notably, she claimed Altman withheld information from the board, including failing to inform them in advance about the release of ChatGPT.
Wait, he didn't tell the board he was releasing ChatGPT?
According to her, no. A globally transformative product launch. And he also allegedly failed to disclose his personal ownership of OpenAI's startup fund, which created a very clear conflict of interest.
Failing to notify the governing body about a globally consequential product launch. That just seems like a high-stakes decision driven entirely by a desire for speed and control.
It is. And furthermore, Toner connected this operational style to personal allegations. She stated that 2 OpenAI executives had reported psychological abuse from Altman, and that they had evidence like screenshots. And she linked this pattern all the way back to his very first company, Loopt, alleging that Loopt's management team had previously requested, twice, that he be fired for deceptive and chaotic behavior.
That suggests a long-standing, aggressive, and maybe sometimes volatile operational style that predates his fame and the AI boom entirely. And there was also a serious issue regarding employee departures.
Yes. There were accusations that Altman lied about being unaware of a provision in employee agreements, a provision that allowed the company to cancel the equity of departing employees if they didn't sign these strict, standard non-disparagement agreements.
Which is the kind of aggressive corporate tactic that seems, well, jarring when you juxtapose it against a backdrop of building technology to save humanity.
It seems the constant unifying theme across both Y Combinator and OpenAI is this extreme velocity moving so fast that structural and ethical boundaries are constantly being tested or, in some cases, outright ignored, all in the pursuit of the next massive leap forward.
And if we connect this intense operational pressure and pursuit of velocity to the bigger picture, we see it just mirrored in the sheer scale of his financial empire.
Exactly. Altman is not just an operator. He is one of the most prolific and influential venture investors in the world.
The numbers are staggering. As of June 2024, his personal investment portfolio includes stakes in over 400 companies.
400?
With a valuation estimated around $2.8 billion. He debuted on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index in March 2024 with a net worth of $2 billion, and that's mostly derived from his venture funds like Hydrazine Capital.
And that scale, it naturally brings unavoidable scrutiny about conflicts of interest, especially since some of those 400 investments are in companies that either partner with or are crucial suppliers to OpenAI.
We should acknowledge, though, that the current OpenAI board, led by Chairman Brett Taylor, has publicly stated that Altman has been transparent about his investments since the 2023 upheaval.
Which is the necessary prerequisite for his continued leadership, yes. But let's look at the backbone of this empire, Hydrazine Capital.
He co-founded it immediately after the Loopt exit in 2012.
Right. And while Altman put in $5 million of his own money, the real engine was Peter Thiel, his longtime friend and mentor, who financed the bulk of the initial $21 million fund. This basically established Altman as Thiel's proxy in key emerging technologies.
And the institutional trust in Altman's judgment has just grown exponentially since then.
It has. When Hydrazine later launched its fourth fund, the University of Michigan endowment was the only outside investor, and their investment was the largest commitment the endowment had ever made to a single venture fund.
That level of faith, it just speaks volumes about Altman's reputation as a visionary capital allocator.
And what's fascinating is where he chooses to place that capital. It's that hard technology focus he tried to instill at Y Combinator, focusing on these fundamental global infrastructure problems, energy and longevity.
These are the inputs required for the AGI future he's trying to build.
Precisely. Well, let's start with clean energy. Altman is chairman of Helion Energy, a company working on nuclear fusion research, the ultimate solution for clean, limitless power.
He also co-founded Altsea Acquisition Corp., a SPAC, which successfully merged with Oklo Inc., a firm developing advanced fission nuclear energy systems.
The Oklo involvement is key to understanding his strategy. He remained chairman of Oklo until April 2025, and he stepped down with the stated intention to avoid conflict of interest and, critically, to open up opportunities for future deals between OpenAI and Oklo.
He's confirming the fundamental link in his own mind. AI's demand for compute power is so massive, it requires entirely new clean energy infrastructure.
He's not waiting for the power grid to solve the problem. He's funding the solution himself.
And he cemented that connection by also investing in Exowatt, a solar energy startup specifically designed to provide clean power to data centers. The entire energy portfolio is an integrated strategy to fuel the AI revolution.
Then on the biotech side, he's focused intensely on extending the human lifespan, which I think reflects his personal preparedness mindset.
He has stakes in Retro Biosciences, a research company with the stated goal of extending human life by 10 years.
And he also invested in MiniCircle, a longevity biotech firm focused on gene therapies, where he and Peter Thiel were both early seed investors.
So these aren't passive investments. They represent an attempt to accelerate human existence and survival right alongside the acceleration of AI. And we can't forget his history with established tech platforms like Reddit.
His connection to Reddit is long-standing. He served as the interim CEO for 8 days back in 2014, another short, high-impact tenure, and he remained on the board until 2022.
And prior to Reddit's 2024 IPO, he was listed as the third largest shareholder. He owned around 9% of the company. That's a massive windfall.
It cements his status as a major owner of what is essentially an internet utility. And then finally, you have the highly esoteric yet deeply philosophical investments in governance structures.
Like his funding of charter city projects, Prospera and Praxis.
Right. These are projects linked to the network state movement, which seeks to create new, sovereign digital and physical societies. They reflect this underlying belief that traditional governance structures are too slow or ineffective to handle the technological changes he is enacting.
If governments can't adapt, he's just funding the alternatives.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer ambition coupled with the immediate global controversy of Worldcoin.
Worldcoin embodies his drive to solve the biggest future problems, in this case, identity using highly disruptive and ethically challenged methods. He co-founded this crypto project in 2019 under the company Tools for Humanity.
The core mechanism is radical. Worldcoin aims to use these orb-shaped iris scanners to provide proof of personhood and authentication.
The idea being that in a world increasingly saturated with sophisticated AI bots, the ability to prove you're a human becomes a fundamental necessity.
Especially for something like global UBI distribution. By 2023, they had already scanned 2 million people's eyes globally to create these unique digital identifiers.
The utopian vision, a global identity network enabling universal basic income, is clear. But the execution has been met with immediate and fierce backlash.
The sources specifically note claims of deceptive marketing practices and exploitation of workers, often in developing regions, who were offered free crypto in exchange for scanning their biometric data.
And the regulatory response has been a near global effort to clamp down on the practice.
Oh, absolutely. Kenya suspended Worldcoin very quickly over security and privacy concerns. Major investigations or suspensions have been launched across multiple jurisdictions. France, the UK, Bavaria, South Korea, Spain, Portugal, Hong Kong.
It's striking that Worldcoin has never even been offered in the United States because of that domestic regulatory scrutiny.
It really illustrates a profound global tension. Altman is pushing the frontiers of identity in anticipation of the AI world, but global regulators are fiercely resisting the methods used to achieve that goal. They're fearing exploitation and mass privacy invasion.
This pushback reinforces a key element of the Altman profile: a relentless enthusiasm for disruptive global deployment that frequently outpaces established regulatory, ethical, and legal frameworks, often leading to global friction. Which raises an important question. How does someone building AGI, operating a massive investment empire, and running a globally controversial identity project, how does he view his own role in politics and society?
His political ambition has been evident for years. He actually contemplated running for California governor in 2018.
Really?
Yeah, and then he launched the United Slate, which was a political project explicitly focused on policy fixes for crucial U.S. issues like housing and healthcare.
Yeah.
It just demonstrates a desire to influence policy at a systemic level.
His political loyalties, though, they read less like an ideology and more like a detailed risk mitigation portfolio.
That's a great way to put it. The sources illustrate this shifting, very pragmatic political spectrum. He hosted a fundraiser for Democrat Andrew Yang in 2019.
Then he donated $250,000 to a super PAC supporting Joe Biden in 2020.
But then later boosted Representative Dean Phillips in his 2023-2024 primary challenge to Biden.
And that strategic hedging continued right through 2024 and 2025. He was named to San Francisco Mayor-elect Daniel Lurie's transition team in November 2024.
Then just a month later, reports emerged of a $1 million donation to Donald Trump's inaugural fund. But he immediately followed that up by hosting a fundraiser for Democrat Senator Mark Warner in March 2025.
That list, Yang, Biden, Phillips, Trump, Warner, it covers almost the entire political landscape. He's effectively ensuring that he has access and influence regardless of who holds the reins of power.
Which is paramount when you are building technology that will likely require intense regulation or potentially massive government contracts.
And he tried to define this nonpartisan, power-centric approach on a philosophical level. On July 4, 2025, he posted this long message on X, declaring himself politically homeless.
Right. He criticized the Democratic Party, stating it no longer encouraged a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. And then he articulated his core belief in what he termed techno-capitalism.
Techno-capitalism. It feels like a political framework explicitly designed to justify his entire operating structure.
I think so. It suggests that technology, especially AGI, is the inevitable and primary driver of capital creation and social organization, and that traditional politics should basically defer to the needs of innovation and the people creating that technology.
Which is why the policy questions tied to the economics of AGI are so crucial. If AGI creates unimaginable wealth, how should that value be distributed?
And Altman has been a long-standing and vocal supporter of universal basic income, or UBI, and also land value taxation.
In his influential 2021 blog post, Moore's Law for Everything, he provided a truly staggering projection.
He predicted that AI could generate enough economic value within 10 years to fund a UBI of $13,500 per year for every U.S. adult.
That's a specific, concrete economic vision tied directly to the success of his work at OpenAI.
But by 2024, his approach had evolved. He suggested a new form of UBI called Universal Basic Compute, proposing to give everyone a slice of ChatGPT's computing power instead of pure cash.
And that's a subtle but critically important shift.
It really is.
Why is that shift from cash to compute access so critical for you, the listener, to understand?
Because if the future's most valuable resource is compute power, the ability to run AGI models, and everyone gets a fixed slice of that resource, then the technology creators like OpenAI maintain the centrality of their platform as the primary distributor of utility.
So if your economic mobility is tied to the slice of compute you receive from a corporation rather than fungible government cash,
then your economic agency is tied to the goodwill and continued existence of that corporate utility. It ensures that techno-capitalism maintains control over the means of production rather than decentralizing the wealth.
that reframes the debate entirely. It moves it from a simple welfare issue to a fundamental power structure issue.
And beyond the political and economic frameworks, his personal life also reveals this intense focus on preparation and the future. He's been a vegetarian since childhood, and he publicly disclosed his sexuality. He's gay at 17 while still in high school.
He dated his Loopt co-founder, Nick Sevo, for 9 years. He then married Oliver Maliran, a former computer science student and engineer, in Hawaii in January 2024.
They live between San Francisco and Napa, California, and they welcomed a son in 2025. They've also publicly committed to giving away most of their wealth by signing the Giving Pledge in May 2024.
But the most enduring personal anecdote that connects his private life to his professional existential urgency is his identity as an apocalypse preparer.
Right. In a highly revealing 2016 statement, he detailed his prepping arsenal.
He stated that he owned guns, gold, potassium iodide, antibiotics, batteries, water, gas masks from the Israel Defense Forces, and a big patch of land in Big Sur I can fly to.
This is more than just a quirky detail. It's a physical manifestation of the high-stakes existential risk he constantly cites when talking about AGI.
He believes the technology he is building has the potential for societal collapse, and he is physically, personally, and financially prepared for that outcome.
It just underscores the profound urgency and internal tension that drives his operational speed.
And finally, we have to address the serious and recent personal challenges. In January 2025, his sister, Ann Altman, filed a lawsuit alleging sexual abuse that she says began when she was 3 and he was 12.
And Sam Altman, his mother, and his 2 brothers issued a strong joint statement denying the allegations, calling them utterly untrue. The sources present this as a very serious and ongoing legal and personal challenge that has entered his life recently.
It's injecting significant private turmoil into his public sphere. And we also need to circle back to the persistent presence of Peter Thiel in Altman's career.
Thiel was his main backer at Hydrazine Capital, and Altman served on the board of multiple SPACs sponsored by Thiel Capital. It's a foundational relationship in Silicon Valley.
The connection highlights the critical importance of that specific network.
The bond is so strong that the sources cite an anecdote from late 2023. At a birthday party hosted by Thiel, Thiel reportedly warned Altman that half of his subordinates at OpenAI wanted him removed.
A warning that provided critical foresight just weeks before the November 2023 board firing.
A warning at a party that may have literally saved his corporate life. That is the kind of powerful, networked survival mechanism that defines this particular echelon of the tech world.
So what does this all mean? The core takeaway for me is that Sam Altman's career is marked by this extreme ambition, always pushing the boundaries of what is financially or structurally accepted.
As we saw with the unapproved YC title and the opacity at OpenAI.
Right. He built an empire through high-stakes finance across AI, nuclear energy, biotech, and identity systems, a willingness to court massive global controversy with Worldcoin, and, perhaps most definingly, an incredible ability to survive corporate crises through sheer talent and momentum leverage.
The rise of Sam Altman is really a reflection of a profound paradigm shift. A shift where the power of technology, specifically AGI and compute, is viewed not just as a business opportunity, but as a fundamental political and philosophical force.
He's actively trying to dictate the economic terms of the future.
Whether it's through UBI, or Universal Basic Compute, while maintaining control over the infrastructure through his massive investment portfolio in energy and longevity. He embodies the techno-capitalist operator who believes he is indispensable to the survival of the species, regardless of the immediate governance challenges or accusations of cutting corners.
He seems to view the stakes as existential, and therefore his operational method is just perpetual motion, a constant search for the next lever to accelerate his vision.
So we've thoroughly analyzed Sam Altman's self-designation as politically homeless and his advocacy for solutions like Universal Basic Compute. And this is really the crux of the future tension. If the creation of AGI generates enough value to fund $13,500 per person annually as he projected, who truly holds the ethical reins?
Is it the creators, the very figures who also invest heavily in the physical, political, and longevity infrastructure of the future?
Or must it be a decentralized, globally regulated body? When the source of future wealth is a corporate utility, the nature of governance changes entirely. That's the dynamic that will define the coming decades of human-AI integration.
Welcome to The Debate. Today we're confronting the paradox of, well, one of the most significant and certainly one of the most polarizing figures shaping our modern technological landscape, Sam Altman. As the CEO who guided OpenAI from a dedicated research lab to the entity that launched ChatGPT in 2022, his influence on the current AI boom is simply undeniable. Yet his trajectory is uniquely marked by these periods of really intense controversy and scrutiny over his operational decisions.
Right. And his career presents us with a fascinating, and I would say perhaps troubling study in tension. The central question we're debating today is whether Sam Altman's career is primarily defined by a successful, unwavering dedication to realizing long-term, beneficial technological transformation. I mean, tackling huge challenges like artificial general intelligence and fusion energy, or if it is in fact better characterized by a recurring pattern of operational opacity and strategic risk-taking that potentially undermines his stated commitment to safety and collective benefit.
I will be presenting the case for Altman as the ambitious and, I'd argue, essential visionary. My position is that his methods, while yes, often aggressive or unconventional, are ultimately justified by the sheer magnitude of the world-changing technology he is trying to execute.
And I will present the contrasting case, focusing on the historical and more recent evidence that highlights, I think, a disturbing pattern of management issues, a systemic lack of candor, and accountability concerns that just seem to persist across his ventures.
So my position really rests on acknowledging the unprecedented scale of the challenges Altman has chosen to tackle. We are not discussing incremental improvements here. We are talking about an existential-level pursuit. He co-founded OpenAI, in part explicitly motivated by concerns about the existential risk posed by artificial general intelligence, which he, fully anticipates will eventually surpass human intelligence. The mission is, by its very definition, a high-stakes endeavor. And this ambition, it extends far beyond the digital realm. His vision is fundamentally holistic, focusing on key bottlenecks to global flourishing. He currently serves as chairman of Helion Energy, deeply committed to nuclear fusion, and until recently was chairman of Oklo, which is focused on nuclear fission. This commitment demonstrates an intention to solve world-scale problems, particularly the immense future energy needs required to support advanced technology.
And crucially, he frames technological success not as a purely financial endeavor, but as a path to collective benefit. He's a vocal supporter of universal basic income, once stating that within a decade, AI could generate enough value to fund a UBI of $13,500 per year for every adult in the U.S. This kind of colossal goal requiring, in his words, more capital than any nonprofit has ever raised, does, in my estimation, necessitate and justify the highly unconventional approach he adopts.
I can see the scope of that vision is impressive, but the crucial question is whether that vision is being executed with the integrity that such a mission demands. The material reveals a systemic pattern that really undercuts the narrative of a selfless visionary. The documented operational history reveals recurring issues with candor and transparency, strongly suggesting that strategic control consistently outweighs institutional trust. And the most visible manifestation of this was his sudden removal from the OpenAI board in November 2023, where the board explicitly stated he was not consistently candid in his communications. And this lack of candor isn't just an isolated incident. It's a career motif. We have specific examples from the time surrounding that firing. A former board member alleged that Altman did not inform the board of the ChatGPT release in advance. A monumental strategic decision, and failed to disclose his significant ownership of OpenAI's startup fund, which creates immediate, difficult conflicts. This history extends far earlier. At Y Combinator, it was later revealed he had falsely claimed the title of chairman of the board, including in SEC filings, a title that YC Partners never actually approved. And going all the way back to his initial company, Loopt, management reportedly asked for his termination twice for what they termed deceptive and chaotic behavior. Taken together, this is not necessary visionary friction. It's evidence of a leader who consistently prefers operating outside of established institutional restraints.
While I concede the scale of the historical operational issues, particularly those at Y Combinator and the painful episode in 2023, these issues seem to pale in comparison to the sheer global utility and the impact of the technology being deployed right now. When we evaluate projects aimed at fundamentally reshaping the world, we have to distinguish between standard corporate governance issues and, let's say, necessary efficacy and execution. Let's consider Worldcoin in this light.
Questionable means, and it brings this ethical tension right to the forefront. The project is designed to provide proof of personhood using iris scanning, collecting highly sensitive biometric data. This has not been universally accepted. Regulators in numerous jurisdictions, we're talking France, the UK, Spain, Kenya, Hong Kong, have launched investigations or suspended Worldcoin's operations, citing grave concerns over biometric data privacy and the potential for fraud. Furthermore, there have been well-documented accusations of deceptive marketing practices, specifically targeting vulnerable populations in developing countries to drive rapid signups. This regulatory and ethical pushback, it demonstrates a willingness to prioritize explosive, rapid scale that move fast and break things mentality over a measured, ethical implementation, which directly contradicts the stated mission of ensuring benefit for humanity.
That's a compelling argument regarding the immediate governance challenges WorldCoin presents. But I believe the controversies you cite are the inevitable friction that arises when you pursue world-changing scale under a timeline dictated by Moore's law. Where others see controversy, I see the willingness to accept regulatory complexity as a cost of executing a technology that attempts to solve the global identity problem. The true measure of his leadership is his demonstrable ability to navigate these crises successfully and decisively. Take, for example, his actions during the Silicon Valley Bank depositor run in March 2023. He immediately provided capital to multiple startups during a genuine financial panic, stabilizing a fragile ecosystem. But the most telling evidence of his necessity is the immediate fallout from his November 2023 firing. His rapid return to OpenAI was not mandated by a few board members. It was demanded by over 700 employees, the technical core of the company, who threatened to defect to Microsoft en masse. This action, it speaks volumes. It validates his leadership as essential to achieving the company's core AGI mission, effectively overriding the short-term technical governance concerns held by the previous board. The staff judged that his presence was mission critical.
Okay, the pressure from the technical staff certainly confirms his immense internal influence, I grant that. But it does not resolve the deep-seated issues surrounding governance, particularly concerning conflicts of interest and his financial strategy. We have to look at the scale of potential conflict. His personal investment portfolio is vast. It includes stakes in over 400 companies valued at approximately $2.8 billion. Now, given OpenAI's massive footprint and rapid expansion, it is virtually certain that some of those investments intersect with or directly conflict with companies doing business with OpenAI, its partners, or its competitors. So while his supporters might argue he is transparent, the sheer density and size of that portfolio creates inherent structural conflicts that are incredibly difficult to fully mitigate. It raises the fundamental question: when a crucial decision is made, say which cloud provider to use or which hardware company to partner with, how can anyone fully trust that the decision prioritizes the mission of safe AGI development over the strategic advantage of one of his 400 investments?
I'm not entirely convinced by the implication that the sheer size of the portfolio renders him incapable of sound judgment. That line of reasoning, I think, it ignores his demonstrated strategic attempts to actively mitigate conflicts to ensure the AGI mission continues unimpeded. Consider a highly specific example: his decision in April 2025 to step down as chairman of Oklo. He did this explicitly to, quote, avoid conflict of interest and to open up opportunities for future deals between OpenAI and Oklo. This is a clear, self-imposed limitation that demonstrates a strategic priority on the AGI mission over maintaining personal board roles or, maximizing personal financial control. Furthermore, we have to look at his long-term commitment. He and his spouse committed to the Giving Pledge in May 2024, vowing to give away the majority of their estimated $2.1 billion net worth.
This signals a concrete commitment to large-scale philanthropy, which significantly tempers the notion that personal profit is his primary driver. His actions, like stepping down from Oklo and making the Giving Pledge, are intended to functionally divorce his personal financial success from the ultimate mission of OpenAI.
That is a clever framing, attempting to sanitize the high-risk financial profile through the promise of future philanthropy. But the appearance of conflict remains significant, and the underlying ideology driving his choices raises deep concerns about the sustainability of OpenAI's initial safety mandate. Elon Musk's lawsuit, while ultimately dismissed by OpenAI, alleged that Altman essentially broke the company's founding agreement by prioritizing profit over the benefit to humanity. Now, while we can debate the details of that claim, the allegation itself strikes at the heart of the original nonprofit governance structure he himself helped create. And this shift is crystallized in his public embrace of an ideology he calls techno-capitalism. This is not a benign term. It suggests a philosophical prioritization of innovation speed and strategic freedom above traditional ethical oversight or regulatory alignment. For a company founded on the principle of ensuring AGI safety, leaning into an ideology that actively criticizes traditional governance and regulation, as he has done by criticizing the Democratic Party for not encouraging a culture of innovation, suggests that the method, rapid, unfettered growth, now overshadows the core mandate of safety-first benefit to humanity. The material demonstrates a profound conflict between the founder's original intent and the current operator's philosophy.
I see why you frame techno-capitalism as a threat to traditional safety frameworks, but I would argue it's a necessary adaptation. Traditional governance models are simply too slow and too risk-averse to manage technologies that are advancing exponentially. Altman's philosophy is an acknowledgement that to truly control AI and ensure global safety, you must move with speed and scale, and that requires a leader who is willing to operate on the edge of the system.
But operating on the edge of the system often creates casualties, and that brings us right back to his internal management style and the potential for a corrosive culture. We have to address the specific claims regarding the working environment. Former board member Helen Toner alleged that 2 OpenAI executives reported what they described as psychological abuse from Altman. Furthermore, during the 2023 crisis, many employees reportedly feared retaliation if they did not actively support his reinstatement. This is a critical point. If employees feel they must support him out of fear, not simply because they believe in the mission, that undermines the integrity of the collective action you cited earlier. The pattern, from the deceptive and chaotic behavior alleged at Loopt to the recent fears of retaliation, suggests a managerial style based on personal loyalty and control, not sustainable, transparent corporate leadership.
Those are serious allegations that demand consideration, and I don't dismiss the reports of psychological stress or management difficulties. That level of internal friction, well, it's what we are asked to accept as necessary friction. However, we must weigh this against his demonstrated and, frankly, unrivaled capacity to achieve transformative results and command global influence. Look at his tenure leading Y Combinator. He successfully scaled the accelerator with the goal of funding 1,000 new companies per year. This shows an unparalleled capacity for building and executing on an enormous, complex scale. More recently, his actions on the global stage confirm his status as an essential figure. His 2023 world tour was not a holiday. He met with key international leaders and diplomats, including the prime ministers of the UK and India and the president of the European Commission. He has successfully positioned himself as an indispensable global interlocutor, critical not just to advancing AI, but to shaping its eventual global regulation. His ability to secure this position of influence speaks volumes about his effectiveness as a leader, irrespective of temporary internal friction.
The global influence is clear, but that influence seems to be a product of relentless strategic control, not necessarily flawless ethical governance. The fact that key global figures feel they must negotiate with him validates his strategic success, but it doesn't invalidate the internal claims of management issues or the external claims of operational opacity. The historical record suggests a leadership style where the ends, achieving the mission, securing the influence, maximizing the scale, consistently justify potentially ethically challenging or structurally opaque means.
In conclusion, Sam Altman's vision is being realized on an undeniable, massive scale. From the rapid deployment of ChatGPT that redefined technology consumption to his deep, long-term investments in future energy through fusion and fission. The persistent controversy and operational friction are, in my view, simply reflective of the extraordinary pressure and speed required to execute truly transformative projects like AGI, where conventional governance models often struggle to keep pace and where the leader must necessarily move ahead of consensus. His ultimate commitment to large-scale benefit, anchored by his UBI proposals and the Giving Pledge, should shape our ultimate view of his motivations.
While the ambition and the scale of his technological contributions are clear, the recurring pattern of opacity, from the falsely claimed YC title and the regulatory issues surrounding Worldcoin to the specific documented reasons for his brief removal and reinstatement at OpenAI, presents a high-risk profile that we cannot ignore. The material raises serious questions about whether his stated commitment to the benefit of humanity can ever truly be separated from a relentless, years-long pursuit of strategic control and rapid, sometimes ethically challenging growth. The evidence forces us to weigh the efficacy of the leader against the integrity of the process.
The documented evidence leaves the listener to weigh the profound technological contributions that are rapidly reshaping society against the recurring governance and ethical challenges that characterize the complex leadership of one of the chief architects of AI.
And that is where we leave the debate for today.